Sinclair wants to know what's with all this head game crap, so British Blonde Chin explains that they want to know what happened at the Battle of the Line. There's that 24 hours that Sinclair can't account for, saying he blacked out. 24 hours is a long time to black out, even by hangover movie standards. So they're going to dig around in there and see what they can find. He rattles off Sinclair's particulars to show that he's read the file, but it takes a lot more to impress Sinclair than literacy. So British Blonde Chin summons Mitchell, one of the other pilots at the line, and who died there when he fell for a Minbari trap. But now he's throwing Sinclair's survival guilt in his face. And while that doesn't work, Sinclair mentions his attempt to ram the Minbari ship, right before that blackout. But the Blonde Chins have their own theory about that.
I've never been able to remember. You don't want to remember. You don't want to remember the 24 hours in which you betrayed your own race. The day you became a traitor. The day you sold...
Damn, look at Sinclair, not above a punch to the kidney. While the guy goes off to piss some blood, the B-5 crew have been searching for Sinclair, even sending out a maintenance bot to look around the station for a body, just in case the worst had happened. Benson had been skulking around too, though it's unclear whether he's trying to cover his ass or is worried that this has to do with what he did and he feels guilty. Whatever the case, the Blonde Chins are discussing what happened, with the British one convinced that Sinclair does know something about that 24-hour period, so they have to continue, even if it might kill Sinclair in the process. So they push back into his mind, calling up a vision of a circle of people in gray robes with hoods over their faces. The Grey Council. Who then zaps Sinclair for the audacity of showing up at their extreme toga party dressed like that. Meanwhile, Garibaldi has learned that Benson's debts have all vanished, and he quickly puts together that the guy took a sizable bribe for something. And sure enough, Benson stops by Chin 1 and Chin 2 to get help dealing with this predicament. Part of the deal was supposed to be a transfer to another posting, so he probably assumes that they have some kind of influence that can get him out of this jam. But he seems to quickly realize how in over his head he is when he sees Sinclair in the mani-pedi chair of doom, and the other guy has covered himself up in all kinds of assorted junk.
Terminate.
I meant the program. Well, be more specific next time. Well, poor Benson's corpse gets tossed out the airlock.
We found it. There's not much left. It depressurized fast when they're shoved out into space.
Is Benson all right?
I'd recognize that pituitary gland anywhere. They spread out from the airlock to search for whoever did this, probably related to the commander's disappearance, they figure. Speaking of which, back to the interrogation. The mystery has been twofold. What happened during that 24-hour period, and why did the Minbari surrender? The theory of the Chins is that, realizing how much they would lose attempting a straightforward attack, they instead captured Sinclair and turned him against his own people.
They needed a fifth column. People like you. Look at us, Commander. Alien civilization, alien migration, aliens buying up real estate by the square mile, alien funding of Babylon 5.
That land thing might seem like a weird thing to include, but this actually has been a recurring touchstone for people leery of foreigners. In the 70s and the early 80s, the image was of Arabs, flush with money from oil, buying up everything and even trying to buy up our women, or trading livestock for them. In the mid-80s into the 90s, it was the Japanese now, buying everything with their enormous economic power fueled by their hive mentality work ethic, trying to get through money what they failed to achieve through conquest. The irony of all this being not only the obvious lie at the root of these, foreign investment during both these periods were frequently from European countries, because American businesses, real estate, and even currency is, for the most part, a worthwhile business investment. But it actually discouraged investment from both those places when they had lots of money to invest, leading to American companies badly in need of capital, trying to sell land and even a stake in the company, but being shunned by Arab and Japanese businesses who feared the backlash over their involvement would destroy those investments. In other words, selective xenophobia and racist imagery were hurting the very businesses and unemployed workers they were supposedly championing far worse than the target of their bigotry, revealing it to not only be morally bankrupt, but foolhardy, like a man who swings a pickaxe at his own foot purely to spite a shoe salesman. Anyway, Sinclair insists this Yahoo has no idea what he's talking about. Anyone who had actually been there, seen what the Minbari had brought to the party, would know it was hopeless. The Minbari had no military reason to back down. Their losses would have been insignificant. There's no knowing why they surrendered, but avoiding a Pyrrhic victory was not one of them. But the Minbari assassin back in the gathering, especially his comment, "There's a hole in your mind," well, even Sinclair has to admit to himself that there must be something more going on. And it goes unstated, but there's the remark Delenn made when the Soul Hunter showed up. He remembers the fight, everybody dying, his ship critical, the decision to kamikaze a warship, and then disabled, drawn inside the ship, taken prisoner, tortured. Well, obviously that wasn't the torture. "Now we'll show you the glowy thing, unless you are finally ready to talk. No? Then behold the glowy thing! Behold it and despair!" He also looked under one of the hoods of the Grey Council and recognized them. But before that can be revealed, Sinclair is breaking free. We'd seen him repeatedly straining to make a fist in the illusion. It seems that he was readying himself to try and break out of his restraints. Oh, right the junk. The other guy comes over, but even his powerful chin is no match for Sinclair's fist, and the guy crumples under one hit. The problem, though, is all those drugs they pumped into him has messed him up. He may have been cognizant in the illusion, but in reality, he's convinced he's on the Minbari ship and needs to escape.
Commander!
That was close, and Sinclair's a good shot. This is your lucky day.
Commander, I'm following him.
Guess it was a short day.
Red 6, level 2.
And Porkins is our best cop. Sinclair, American Blondchin, and Garibaldi's team all wind up in a three-way firefight, but after the bad guy is taken down, Sinclair won't stop shooting. So Delenn heads in, trying to talk him down, but she was the one whose face he saw under that hood. Luckily for her, he shoots American Blondchin instead, putting him down for good, and apparently once he's gotten the shoot somebody out of his system, he's ready to take a nap now. When he's better, he gets more good news. Earth Central wants the survivor brought there for trial, try to expose the extent of his organization. Not that he's going to have much to say. That punch pretty much wiped the guy's memory, and he only babbles nonsense when Sinclair asks him. But there's also some caginess between Sinclair and Delenn. Friendly as always on the surface, but she suspects that he remembers, and the Minbari hiding in her closet says if he does, kill him! It seems everybody wants to kill Sinclair, don't they? And the sky full of stars gets a stamp of fine. While this does fill in some of the blanks, I don't see it as required viewing, and the episode itself, it's just not that great. It's not bad, but what hurts it are the pair of bad guys we've got. The one performs like the generic rich killer in an episode of Remington Steele, and the other like the blowhard head of the villains of the week in Simon & Simon, Riptide, or Knight Rider. In other words, this feels like it was worn out and tired even for the time period when the episode originally aired. We've seen both these guys before, actually. The British guy was the Nazi general on Enterprise, and the other guy was Khan's right-hand man in Star Trek II, and the Romulan from Message in a Bottle. Oddly enough, the British guy was supposed to be Walter Koenig, but he had a heart attack and wasn't available. I'd say that turned out for the best. As far as his relationship to the show went, I mean. I'm obviously not trying to look on the bright side of his heart attack. They then went to Patrick McGowan, who is rather picky about what he does, so his interest showed the potential here, but he was going to be out of the country during filming. This is what I think dooms the episode. Remember comes the Inquisitor? Sebastian's role is very much like the one that Knight 2, as he is credited here, had. That same kind of performance needed. And he was incredible on that. He made the role powerful, engaging. Knight 2 just didn't. That's the difference. You can't fault them. When two recognizable actors both have to drop out, you're left with whoever you can get. And it was simply a role that this guy couldn't carry. Which is a shame because a lot of work clearly went into this. Keep in mind the era when this was shot because this is an eye for cinema that few were trying on television at the time. Never mind in syndication. It's just that Despite that, the episode doesn't engage quite as much as it should have.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Commander! Commander! How's it going, Commander?